Hi everyone and welcome along. I'm the Rackstar and here we are today. We're going to talk about a possible squad that your guild may be able to use to help you get through some of the lower levels of the Sith Triumvitate Raid. It's a very versatile squad and you can sort of swap in one hero amongst four main holdovers. Just a bit of background on our guild. We're sort of in the tier 5, tier 6 range at the moment. We are working towards heroic, but obviously with very specific requirements around heroes and squads. We're still working towards building up good squads to make good shots on the heroic mode. So this has not been tried in heroic mode. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't work in heroic mode, but it does wheel out a couple of the old favorites and hopefully will get you a bit further along in your rating. Alright, so numero uno in our squads is everyone's favorite Darth Vader. Darth's going to be our lead, something that probably a few people might be raising their eyebrow to, but trust me, it can work. So as you can see, Vader's potency is up around 94%. When I first got the squad to work, it was actually as low as 70%. So you can get by with a lower potency. It may not, I guess, work quite as well with that lower potency. Because the idea is you kind of need to get as far over 100% potency as you can for this to work reliably. But yeah, give it a try. If you've got some mods, switch them around and hopefully you can get up to a high threshold. Alright, next up we've got Hermit Yoda. Hermit Yoda is pretty important for this strategy to work. As I said, we're in tier 5, tier 6 at the moment, so we get refreshes every day. So I'm familiar that there's McMole has mentioned a Pathfinder's training squad that utilizes Hermit Yoda. We don't have to worry about that at this end, but our guild, we do actually have a lot of players that are getting Hermit Yoda. So when we get to heroic, we may look at splitting up our Hermit Yodas across phase 2 and potentially this Vader squad that I've come up with. So the main thing we want with Yoda is his master's training, and the reason we want his master's training is because you'll see it gives 25% accuracy, defense, offense, potency, and that's the big one, and tenacity, and it can't be dispelled or prevented. So if we think back to Vader, who I had at 94% potency, by applying Master's Training, I get him up to 120% potency. Next on our list, we got Darth Sidious, another favorite. I'm sure you can start to see where this is going. You can see his potency is very, very low, but we're going to rely on his ability Demoralizing Blows, which is an AoE and adds damage over time and exposed to the enemy. We can get up to 4 damage over times applied if we critical on this, but generally we're looking for 2 to 4. Next one, another classic, another favorite, Boba Fett. His basic with its chance to apply damage over time effects to the target. That's a main reason for having him in here, but it's not the big one. The big one will be his execute ability. As you can see, he's got 70% potency. Certainly not a huge number, but should be good enough to work reliably. Next up is Bodhi Rook. Pretty strange character to get in there, I'm sure you'll agree. A few people would argue that he's one of the worst players in the game, heroes in the game. This might be his one shining moment. What we're looking at with Bodhi is his spotter ability. Now you do need to have an Omega on this ability, but when you get it Omega'd, you apply potency up and offense up to the target hero. So now again, thinking back to our Darth Vader, and a lot of this squad hinges on Darth Vader, we can get Vader up around 170% potency right now if we have spotter and master's training applied to him. So in honor of Bodhi, who is kind of the point of difference and probably doesn't get much praise, I've tentatively named this squad the Good Vibration Squad, which is sort of a play on Bodacious and the Beach Boys, who are arguably the most bodacious of all. So without further ado, let's get in the video and I'll sort of go through how this squad works. It does depend a little bit on RNG, so keep that in mind. You're maybe not going to get the perfect result the first time. You might have to retreat out a few times and get RNG working in your favor, but once it does, it pays off in spades. Alright, so here we are, phase 1. As you can see, what we're going to do is we're going to potency up from the Master's Training is going to go straight onto Vader. We're attacking the side adds, and then what I've done is I've now applied his potency up to Darth Vader. So at this point, his potency is at 170%. As you can see, we land a few damage over times there. Follow up immediately with Sidious and his AoE, and we've got a couple more damage over times. Now, every single count of the damage over times equates to 0.01% damage to the boss, which doesn't seem like much, but if you can get up to 10, 12, 14, 15 debuffs applied to the boss, what you're creating is 0.15% bonus damage, essentially free damage to the boss that is persistent every time the boss takes a turn. And this is kind of important as you get further on into the fight. When the adds are dead and your heroes are hitting Nihilus on his own, Nihilus is actually gaining turn meter every time he's hit. So you can sort of cycle through his turns and at the same time sort of help him along in killing himself. So as you can see, you're just going to go basically for the boss's face when it's just him on his own. Not much you can do about it. You want to be using your Execute and your Culling Blade whenever you can, and you're going to use Sidious's AoE on cooldown. It's a pretty reliable stick. I've had instances where it's quite hard to land it on Darth Traya at the end of her encounter, but in the first two phases it works quite well. I don't see any reason to hold off on using it. The one hero and the one ability that you want to be very sort of diligent and considerate with when you apply it is Force Crush. For whatever reason, that particular ability, you want the lowest amount of tenacity on the boss and the highest amount of potency on Darth Vader when you go to land it. So what we'll do is we'll just speed it up a little bit here, and you can just see how the fight plays out, and then we'll move on to the next squad. While we sort of ramble on through, I'll just talk a little bit about our guild. So our guild, we would, I guess, categorize ourselves as casual elite up until recently. We sort of slipped a little bit down. We're probably a little bit more casual at the moment. Personally, that kind of comes back a bit to what we're sort of noticing is quite a high attrition rate in the game now. I think when the Sith raid was initially released, coinciding with a few other things going on in the game, we had a lot of our players actually cut back on the time and the commitment to the game, and we totally understand that. As a guild, we sort of promote life first, game second, and so what we found is part of the reason that people were I guess not committing as heavily to this new raid was essentially because it was very difficult out of the gate. Early feedback was that basically the only squad that worked reliably was the Jedi Training Ray squad. A large number of our guild did not have Jedi Training Ray, so it was quite downheartening to essentially feel like you couldn't contribute to the raid in any way, shape or form, and therefore a few people were less inclined to want to go out and give it their all every time, and that's part of the reason that had me sort of theory craft this squad and work on it. Was I think most of these heroes, particularly the Good Vibration squad, most people have Sidious, most people have Vader, Boba Fett's the same. A lot of people jumped right on Hermit Yoda. We still don't have a full guild's worth of Hermit Yodas in terms of inventory, but we're getting up there. And Bodhi Rook, while he's a recent character and arguably a really bad character, really cheap to get. You can pick him up in the Galactic War shipments, and the Galactic War these days is one of the easiest things you can do. We'll talk about it another day, but I'd argue as a mode it's a bit of a waste of time. So this squad, in my humble opinion, is quite easy to get, and because it's quite easy to get, gives guilds or players that are looking to try and make a meaningful contribution while they work on some of those very sort of strange, very niche heroes that will help them conquer the heroic. A squad like this works in phases 1, 2 and 3 very, very well. So you can actually build this squad up and change in 1 or 2 heroes depending on how you feel on any given day, and do pretty consistent damage every time you go through and play it. So I think personally, in my humble opinion, I think it's a really flexible squad, a really viable squad throughout. And and it gives players that may not have the Jedi training way a viable alternative that can give them a chance to be a meaningful contributor to the guild's raids, which I think goes a long way to actually building up interest and passion in the raid in an ongoing sense. So that's sort of where we're at. The video's coming up to an end. We'll do like a nice freeze frame for you so you can see what we ended up on damage, and then in the next video we'll go through 2 more squads that leverage off this Vader squad. I didn't mention at the beginning, but you do need to have a Zeta on your Darth Vader lead, otherwise it'll obviously fall over. But up in the next video we've got the next squad, which I have tentatively named, and humiliatingly so, the Wake Me Up BB for You Go squad, and then the one after that, which will be the Against All Odds squad.